This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth, for competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty, for the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Many, many things going on, many activities and cases and rulings with regard to Freedom Watch and the various legal matters that I've been pursuing as the country continues to be destroyed by the likes of Black Lives Matter, the new Black Panthers Party, other radicals from all stripes in our society. We face a number of situations coming up just in the next few days. And one of that situation, and I wrote a column last Friday on worldnetdaily.com, that's WND.com. You can find it on Freedom Watch's website at freedomwatchusa.org, why the president should not pardon Roger Stone. And the reason is that Roger Stone is someone who the president, if he does pardon him, will be subverting his message that the rule of law should apply. The president's running on a platform as the law and order president. Biden, of course, is looking the other way with regard to all of the destruction, mayhem, and killing that are in the streets these days by the radical left. But the president says, no, I want to stop it. Now, he hasn't done much to stop it. You know, I've been critical about that. Arresting 4 people since this whole thing began almost a month ago is hardly stopping it. But I hope that the president will start to exercise his authority and order police, which he does have the authority to do under his emergency powers, to take the matter up. If not, I think the police should strike and then force white people, frankly, who are running for the exits to feel at risk here, to demand that action be taken. And interestingly enough, it's the African-American conservatives who have been the most outspoken and the strongest. And we're going to have someone on in the show who's running for the 4th Congressional District in Pennsylvania, Kathy Barnett, an African-American woman, very, very impressive. We're going to talk about her credentials and what she hopes to accomplish and her positions with regard to Black Lives Matter and the rest of the crowd out there, the radical crowd that wants to destroy this country. But let's get back to Roger Stone for right now, is that contrary to the dribble that you hear on Fox News with Sean Hannity and also Tucker Carlson, Stone was not persecuted. Stone was convicted on 5 counts of perjury, 1 count of obstruction of justice, another count of witness tampering. He lied under oath to Congress. He did not present, and you won't hear this from Hannity, one witness in his defense at the criminal trial. I sat there for Dr. Jerome Corsi, my brave and fine client, who told the truth, and that's why he wasn't indicted in the Mueller investigation. And Stone feared him. Stone defamed Corsi. He defamed me as Corsi's lawyer. He put other people up to try to harm me, like Pete Santilli. And he was a convicted felon. He was one of the defendants in the Bundy trial. He pled out stupidly before the case was dismissed. He's not the brightest bulb or the sharpest knife in the drawer. But that notwithstanding, Stone is not a good person. Stone, when he was my campaign manager for a few weeks before he was let go, brought all of his miscreant friends into the campaign who left with tens of thousands of dollars of equipment that I had purchased with my own money after I left Judicial Watch to run for the U.S. Senate in Florida. He was actually secretly representing Al Sharpton. Can you believe that? Al Sharpton, who wanted to have political aspirations at the time, was using Roger Stone, but Stone never told me. I had an agreement with him that he would be exclusive, that he wouldn't do any dirty tricks, that he would play it straight, that he would use his knowledge of Florida politics to try to get me elected as U.S. Senator. Now, ask yourself this question, and you can read my column and you'll see more. But how can the president consider pardoning someone, a 7-count convicted felon who actually supported and tried to help someone who was trying to destroy the president? Al Sharpton, with his band of con men, shakedown artists, black vigilantes, hates anything that the president claims to stand for. And he started a race war along with Obama. He had a backdoor to the White House along with Farrakhan, along with the new Black Panthers party with Black Lives Matter. And what we're now seeing today is the results of all of this. In fact, it's clear that Obama's orchestrating it from his $8 million mansion in Washington, D.C. And Sharpton, I'm sure, is a frequent visitor. So this is the kind of person that you're dealing with. But the point I'm making is that Stone was not unfairly convicted. Yes, the judge is biased. Amy Berman Jackson, I had difficulty with her too. I brought a case with regard to the parents, the Gold Star parents of Ty Woods and Sean Smith, who were killed at Benghazi thanks to Hillary Clinton's private email server that gave up their coordinates. I had sued Hillary Clinton for wrongful death. And Berman dismissed that case wrongly on the eve of Memorial Day. Now, why would you do that to Gold Star parents when they're grieving? She's not a nice person. And nor was the foreperson that sat on that jury. But here's the facts of life, the hard facts of life. Roger Stone has never wanted a new trial because he presented no witnesses and virtually no evidence. He was convicted in his own words. He threatened witnesses. He threatened Randy Credico. He threatened to file a bar complaint against Randy Credico's best friend, Margaret Kunstler, as a lawyer, unless Randy would testify falsely or take the Fifth Amendment. He threatened Credico's service dog. And he did many other things, which means that he's deserving of the punishment that he's getting. Now, if the president's going to be the law and order president, and he's going to tell the American people in his reelection bid that I stand for the rule of law and the Constitution, how can you pardon your friend? How can you pardon someone who was your lobbyist in the gambling industry, which is not exactly a kosher industry, as you might imagine? And how can you pardon someone when you claim to be the chief law enforcement officer of this country? You can't, not if you want to be reelected, because you know what? There are a lot of independent voters out there. This election is going to be decided by swing states in my native state of Florida, in Michigan, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, where I was born, those kinds of states. And they're going to look at the pardoning of Stone because he's not a nice person. You know, the old expression goes, when you hang around poop, you start to smell like it. And if the president does that, he's risking his own reelection. So I give him friendly advice, not just to enforce the rule of law. Stone's not going to be in prison for long. He'll probably be out in a year. He's going to minimum security prison. You know, he's hyped it up and said, oh, I'm going to have a death sentence if I go to prison. You can rest assured they'll take care of him in prison. They'll put him in a place, given the fact that he is the president's friend and former lobbyist, that nothing will happen to him. But this is my message for the president, and I hope that he heeds it, and I hope that he reads my column, because you know what? I do send that column to the White House, and there's a report out right now that people in the White House are not happy with the president saying that he thinks he might pardon Roger Stone. It's not the right thing to do. And in fact, you know, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon. It's what cost him the election when he ran against Jimmy Carter. And this is something which you have to take seriously. So I also want you to consider, because people don't understand this, because they're getting a lot of hype from the likes of Hannity and Tucker Carlson, and they're running interference, they're his surrogates, that this was unfair. Well, you know what? How unfair can it be when you don't present one witness at trial? And that's just a simple fact. I was there. Hannity wasn't, and neither was Carlson. And that's a fact. Anyway, let's move on, because what we're facing today with the police departments in this country, and I recommend that these police, frankly, go on strike. I've had police in my family, and they're not supposed to go on strike, but then again, they're not supposed to have their pensions taken away or having things defunded or being disrespected or being shot at or being killed by the mob. I would suggest that to get whites upset so they stop hiding in their caves, you know, just this week, Disney signed a first look agreement with Colin Kaepernick, if you can believe that, Walt Disney. You have the NBA plastering Black Lives Matter on courts, letting the players put expressions on their uniforms, saying anything that they want practically. You've got two national anthems now in the National Football League, one for everybody, the American national anthem, and one for African Americans. I mean, that's just theater of the absurd. And I can go on and on and on. Of course, the Washington Redskins are changing their name to the Washington Warriors, probably. I would suggest they change it to the Washington Losers, because that's what they've been under Dan Snyder, completely a bunch of losers, one of the worst owners in the history of the NFL. But you have white people running for the exits. So just simply boycott. Simply don't come to work, police officers. And you'll see how quick that whites will be back trying to beg you to protect them. Because you know what? This is primarily the result of not just white guilt, but it's the result of white cowardice, because they won't stand up for themselves. They just run for the exits. Now, everybody in this country deserves equal rights, and you'll hear that from Kathy Barnett, who's African-American. When she comes on, you'll hear it from my other clients, Alan Keyes, Demetri Penny. You'll hear it from Armstrong Williams. I've got many, many African-American friends and colleagues, and they are more courageous than white people in this country, believe me. And they have a better heart, and they have a better understanding of the way things work. So that's my message. We're going to come back with my second segment, because there have been a couple developments in our cases which reaffirm my commitment to reforming the federal judiciary, else we're going to go down the drain because we have nobody to protect us. You know, it was Jefferson who said, when the people fear the government, there's tyranny, but when the government fears the people, there's liberty. But you know what? You need judges to keep the peace. And we're headed into a likely violent revolution, which I don't want to see unless judges, federal judges that is, do their job. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Listen carefully. Share this podcast, because this story must be told. And in the interim, go to freedomwatchusa.org and support our cause. Join our Justice League. I'll be right back.
Fearless.
He's claiming he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad,
Special Prosecutor
very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Had a couple recent decisions in the federal courts last Friday. Very troubling decisions. It's typical of what we're up against. One was in the Ninth Circuit. One involved Kiara Robles, a very brave gay woman who I represent, who went to a speech by Milo Yiannopoulos. Always hard to pronounce it. It's Greek. He was writing for Breitbart at the time. Milo is also gay, and that's one of the reasons Kiara, took an interest. She's conservative, but obviously, she wanted to bond with someone of her persuasion, and there's nothing wrong with that. So she went to this speech at Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, and Antifa attacked her, pepper sprayed her, shined lights in her eyes, damaged her eyes. She was hit over the head with a flagpole. And I brought a lawsuit on her behalf, not just against these Antifa people, but also against the city of Berkeley and Berkeley, the university, because they sat around watching, twiddling their thumbs. I think they probably enjoyed it, these leftists, these socialists, these communists. Berkeley is the center of communism when it comes to universities. Now it's spread. It's now endemic in my own alma mater, Duke University. I'll never send any offspring of mine to Duke University. Believe me, I was proud to be an alumnus of Duke, but no longer. And these elite universities right now are responsible for the destruction and the mayhem and the rioting and the looting in the streets, because they've taught young children and others, of course, their children, they're in their teens and going up to 21, they've taught them to hate this country. And that's a fact. That's a sad fact, and we need to re-educate. But to make the long story short, Robles' case, Kiara, was dismissed by a judge who had taught law school at the University of California at Berkeley, not coincidentally, and who also had gone to Berkeley as an undergraduate. And she wouldn't let me continue on the case. I'd been on the case, knocked me off the case, And she wouldn't even take into consideration that my client, Chiara, could not find another lawyer. So she dismissed the case. Well, part of the case did survive, and that's the battery that occurred with regard to Antifa on Robles. But the University of California at Berkeley and the city of Berkeley were let go. They were let go free. And that's typical because most of the judges on that court have gone to Berkeley. They're highly influenced. Most of those judges are very leftist. And frankly, even the ones who aren't kowtow to the left, as many are doing these days. But we're going to find a way to refile the case against Antifa and in a state court. I don't want to go back to that judge. She's poisoned. Her name is Claudia Wilkins. And it's very disappointing that the Ninth Circuit, plays political games. But of course, we know the games that it's played in the past with regard to the president and his amnesty policies and other immigration policies. One of the judges on that court, Judge Gilliam, even enjoined the president using funds from the Defense Department to build the border wall. This is what you're dealing with. And then there was another case that I brought against the Iranian regime years ago with regard to extortion 17. And we alleged, which is undoubtedly correct, that the president of Afghanistan at the time, Helmut Karzai, one of the biggest criminals in world history, someone who's a total crook, who has millions and millions of dollars stashed away in secret bank accounts, that he actually participated with the Taliban in killing our brave servicemen on extortion 17. We've been trying to serve him for 7 years. And we got another terrible, dishonest judge by the name of Colleen Collard-Catelli in that case, a Clinton appointee in district court, who wouldn't allow us to serve Karzai in any possible way. And we suggested that we could even serve him by Twitter because he's on Twitter all the time. Other courts have allowed that. He was running from process servers. So I took that up to the DC Circuit, and they affirmed Catelli's decision not to allow that. Now, the case is continuing with regard to Iran because they were paying bounties on the heads of servicemen. We've sued them, and we'll go to court. We're going to seek to get another judge. But you've got two hack judges here, Claudia Wilkins in the Northern District of California, Colleen Collard-Catelli in DC. And that's symptomatic of what we have on the federal judiciary today. They're politicians in robes. They got their jobs generally through political campaign contributions by special interests and lobbyists. And they are indeed, like I said, politicians in robes, and they don't protect us. And it was Jefferson who said, this is a problem. I do not ascribe to having federal judges, number one. Number two, that they're there for life, which they aren't really, but they think they're there for life. And that myth has never been debunked. I intend to debunk it. And also they have immunity, that they will turn out to be despots and they will harm this country and do it terribly. I'll be right back with Kathy Barnett in the third segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with Kathy Barnett, a very brave person, running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 4th Congressional District. Of course, I'm from that district. I believe, I don't exactly remember what district I was in, but I was born in Philadelphia. And in a personal capacity, I can't do this as head of Freedom Watch, I support her and I endorse her to be a congressman. She's a very brave African-American who has taken on Black Lives Matter and a lot of the injustice that's been occurring. And she's written a book. She has a great history. I want her to tell that history to the audience because you're going to hear a lot more about Kathy Barnett in the days, months, and years ahead.
Larry, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so grateful to be on and to talk to your listeners.
Tell us about your background, Kathy, because it's very impressive.
Well, I will. I often describe myself as a little black girl who grew up on a pig farm in southern Alabama. I grew up below the bottom rung of the economic ladder. I grew up in a situation where I had to look up to see the bottom rung of the economic ladder. I grew up in a home with no insulation, no running water, an outhouse in the back, and a well on the side, and I am not over 50. And yet those were my beginning, but no one ever looked at me and told me that I was a victim. No one ever looked at me and said, the odds are against you, don't even try. And so as a result, I was the first in my family to go and finish college. I spent 10 years in the U.S. Army Reserves, where I was accepted into officer candidacy school. I've worked in many fields, feels as though I've had multiple lifetimes of working in the financial industry, corporate America, an adjunct professor of corporate finance, spent the past 4 years on mainstream media, primarily Fox in New York, and national radio, speaking about a variety of topics. Just wrote my first book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America, that went number 1 on Amazon 2 months in a row. Very excited about that. And now I'm running for Congress, from a pig farm to Congress. My story, I believe, represents all that is good about this country. I believe I represent the American story of what someone can do. I feel as though I crawled from up under a rock. And that only happens in large proportions as it does here in America. And that is the story that I tell, especially to those who will look at my black skin and have me to think that I'm a victim and that all the odds are against me and that this nation is systemically racist and we have to destroy it in order to remake it according to our own vision.
Kathy, we have something in common. You grew up on a pig farm, and I kind of did too, in a way, because my family was in the pork packing business in Philadelphia. I claim it in company. And you may have even eaten some of our pork, although you may have been too young to do that at the time.
No.
And that's
we raised our own pork, but I do remember going with my grandfather on numerous occasions to the slaughterhouse when they would slaughter the pigs and put it in that white wrapping paper. But no, now I don't eat pork because I realize how dangerous it can be in many cases. But
well, it's funny because in terms of pork, I used to actually herd the pigs in the pen when I was a kid. I mean, I had every job imaginable from the bottom up, and I used to tell people when they would ask me, what gave you the strength to take on the Clintons? Because I sued them many times. I'm the only lawyer ever to have a court rule that Bill Clinton committed a crime, Freudian. I say, well, I'm the son of meat packers. I know how to slice and dice. And in fact, that's the opening of this show. But I have to confess, I still do eat pork. I love pork. I don't need to promote the industry anymore. My father's deceased. My grandfather's deceased. And unfortunately, they lost the business years ago. But it is a coincidence. Tell us about what's going on in Philadelphia right now with regard to the police. I'm going to be bringing a lawsuit for several police against the mayor, against the DA, Larry Krasner, who is a real piece of work, a product of George Soros, funded, got into office, and also the former police commissioner before the new one, who's called Danielle Outlaw, very appropriate. Apparently, she's opened up an investigation into police officers who I represent, who had their Twitter and social media accounts hacked, didn't really say anything racist. But, this is part of the jihad. This is part of the effort, in my view, to destroy this country, disarm the police, and then we can take it over and we'll refashion it in our own socialist, communist image. But tell us what your take is on Philadelphia and the state of affairs. It's a rough city. I have family that were police officers. I lived there for 18 years. I still go back there. I love Philadelphia, a city of brotherly hate, I might add, at the current time. But tell us what's happening.
Yeah, I live in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is considered, I've heard a number of people say, it's the suburbs to Philadelphia. So people work in Philadelphia but live in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is the second wealthiest county in the state of Pennsylvania. And I love it. I'm so very grateful to be able to represent. I don't know if you know this or not, but that I am the first Black person to run for Congress in Montgomery County on either side of the political aisle, whether it be Democrat or Republican. And again, I'm not old enough to be the first person to do anything, but that happens to be the case here. About the policing. So in Montgomery County, in Philadelphia, it's so reflective of what's going on all across our nation. Our nation is in trouble. So whether we pick Philadelphia to talk about it, or we pick New York, or we pick Detroit, or Chicago, or Seattle, it is all throughout our nation. Minneapolis, our nation is in trouble. We have a group of agitators that are among us that are bent on making us as a nation ungovernable. And they're wanting to make us ungovernable. I believe there are some very evil, is the best word I can think of, the most appropriate word I can think of, purposes and their desire to make us ungovernable. You can look at, I don't know if you're familiar with Project 1619, but Project 1619 is being played out all across our nation, and it says that America is unredeemable, that America is systemically racist, that America is rotten at the core, and because racism is everywhere, and because racism is in everything, we must utterly destroy America. And then when you ask them, what are you going to put in its place, they say things like, oh, we get to reimagine. That's the same rhetoric they're using when they're talking about we're going to abolish the police, we're going to defund the police. And then you ask them, well, what are you going to put in its place? And then they say, oh, well, we can just reimagine, right? Which is utter foolishness. Right now in Philadelphia alone, the crime has increased by 47%. I believe the last time I looked, 67% in Philadelphia and 47% in New York City, just in a short amount of time, year over year. And as I say to people all the time, defunding the police, it hurts the Black community far more than policing ever could. When you begin to defund the police, when you begin to take out that measure of control, that measure of policing, it exponentially negatively impacts the Black community far more than what one may consider excessive policing, the impact of excessive policing in the Black community. And so those are the conversations that need to be had all throughout our nation, because it's one thing to say hashtag, Black Lives Matter, hashtag defund or abolish the police, hashtag woke. It's one thing to try to say those things because you think they're cute and cheeky, but it's something very different to see those policies, the rhetoric behind those policies actually coming out of theory and taking place and root in real world. It is having a real impact on how we're living our lives.
Well, very well said. By the way, I grew up in Penn Valley. Is that in your district? Penn Valley, Norris, Montgomery County.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
They've gerrymandered. They've gerrymandered and redistricted. So portions of Montgomery, the overwhelming portion of Montgomery County is in my district, but it's been sliced and diced. You really have to take a magnifying glass,
right,
to figure out.
Well, you would call it Narberth. The Narberth post office would have been the post
Narberth
office at the time.
A part. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I wish I was still living there. I could vote for you. But in any event, you said it very, very well. And, I have an African-American client in Dallas, Texas, Demetric Penny, who was among the officers who were assaulted when 5 of his brothers were killed on July 7th, 2016, after Louis Farrakhan had issued, in effect, an order to kill white and police officers in general. In fact, it was a disciple, Micah Johnson, who actually killed those 5 police officers. Now, he was killed after that. But I brought a lawsuit both for Dimitri, because he was assaulted, and also a Latino officer's dad. It was Enrique Zamarripa. Patrick Zamarripa was his son that was killed. And it went in front of federal judges who dismissed the case. They found excuses not to confront it because they were so afraid of the backlash that's occurring. I want to ask you, Kathy, how are you dealing with likely backlash here from, the radicals on the left? I mean, are they attacking you? Because they attacked Dimitri. They called him a House N. They called him Uncle Tom. They threatened his life. They threatened my life. I was his lawyer. How are you dealing with that? Is it happening?
As of right now, nothing any more than what they've already have done. I mean, I've been a conservative for a very long time, and as you may remember, Joe Biden said it plainly and succinctly: if you don't vote for him, then you ain't black. If you don't support the Democrat policies, then you ain't black, right? And so that are the banner in which I've been living for a couple of decades now, because although I often say I was born into the Democrat Party, just like I was born into brown skin. Growing up, there was never a conversation that I remember having with anyone or a discussion about what the policies are. It's just, you're black, you vote Democrat. So I understand why white liberals and many even on the Republican side believe that. However, I've been off the Democrat plantation for a couple of decades now, and one thing I realized is that you cannot be black, conservative, outwardly support the policies of this president and have thin skin. You got to grow thick skin immediately. So I'm used to liberals literally coming into my face and trying to tell me what it means to be black. And so that level of arrogance is still pervasive, coming onto my space or into my space or onto social media, since most of what we do as far as campaigning is taking place on social media. So they come into that space and they try to tell me what the black issues are. I try to tell me what it means to be black. So that level of ridiculously continues on. Anything as far as putting a fatwa on my life or or putting out a call to harm me. I haven't seen any of that. I pray that never happens, but it would not surprise me.
Well, let me know. I'll be there to assist you if you ask. We have about 20 seconds left. Tell people where they can go to contribute to your campaign, Kathy, because I say, again, in my personal capacity, I endorse you and I want you to win.
Thank you so much. We need good people in office now. You can go to Kathy Barnett for Congress.com, Kathy Barnett for Congress.com, and please donate.
Thank you for being with us. We'll bring you back again, and Godspeed, Kathy. Be safe.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Now the verdict, ladies and gentlemen, true Americans. Kathy Barnett is a true American. By the way, her name is spelled Barnette. Barnett, Kathy Barnett. I endorse her personally, not as head of Freedom Watch. I hope that you will help her out. We need more courageous black conservatives like her. She's got more courage than 100 white people wrapped in one, frankly, who are running for the exits today. But let's get back to the central issue here. Central issue here is law and order. The central issue here is a justice system that functions. Of course, I've written a book. It's called It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. I hope you'll buy it. You can pre-order it at Amazon.com, at BarnesandNoble.com, all over the place. You can find it up on the website so you know where to go. But it's a very hard-hitting book, and it deals with the breakdown, the corruption, the rank corruption in all three branches of government, and in particular, the federal judiciary. You know, I'm in state court frequently, and I don't find the same problems there that I find in federal court, because state courts, by and large, like in Florida, the judges tend to be elected. They're accountable to the people. They try to be courteous. They generally don't have a chip on their shoulder. They believe in letting a jury decide the case and not taking it upon themselves to decide whether it's plausible or not. The federal judiciary is out of control. And I just gave you two examples early on during this radio show with Kiara Robles, her case, and our case for the Gold Star parents of Extortion 17 concerning Iran, and Ahmed Karzai and the Taliban and others. But this is a real problem, because if we don't have judges that will protect our interests, currently they protect their own interests. They get there by virtue of political campaign contributions from special interest groups, whether it's corporations, labor unions, or God knows what, or whether they have friendships or whatever. They're not trained properly to be judges. They believe that they're there for life. I don't know where that came from, because the Constitution doesn't say they're there for life. It just says they shall serve for good behavior. And in our 244-year history, only 8 of them have been impeached for either bad behavior or high crimes and misdemeanors, or both. That's about 1 every 35 years. We have no accountability. The Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives doesn't do its job. There's no oversight. And these judges run rampant on the bench. And I recently drew a judge in another case for Laura Loomer out there in the Northern District of California. He's the judge, Judge Gilliam, who enjoined Trump from using Defense Department money to build the border wall. Clearly, there's a national security interest here, and that was proper. And you know what? He was overturned by the Supreme Court. It's no wonder, but they don't care, because they're there for life. So I want you to get my book. I want you to read it carefully. I want you to join Freedom Watch's Justice League. I want you to sign up for our class actions, either against social media or whether it's the communist Chinese, see if you qualify, all of our other hard-hitting cases. And, you know, contrary to what Judicial Watch does today, you know, I founded Judicial Watch on July 29th, 1994, almost 26 years ago at this point. You know, we brought hard-hitting cases. Today, they mostly just get Freedom of Information Act documents. Well, that's fine. But, you know, what are you going to do once you get the documents? And see, we go much further than that. We get documents and we seek justice. Maybe the reason they don't do it is because Tom Fitton's not a lawyer. He wanted to keep it, you know, something that he could handle. But the reality here is that unless we rise up, the American people, and take justice into our own legal and political hands, we're not going to have justice, because we don't have a judiciary, federal judiciary, that will do the job. They're as cowardly as the people in the streets today are from the other side of the fence. And that's why we're headed most likely for a violent revolution, but I want to head that off. I don't want to see that happen. And that's why Freedom Watch has citizens grand juries. We hold people accountable. We've indicted Robert Mueller. We're going to try him. We're going to convict him. We will sentence him. And you can bet the whole lot of them are going to be held accountable, because we don't have an Attorney General, William Barr, that'll do his job. In fact, just this week, he was sympathizing with Black Lives Matter, saying there's endemic abuse against African Americans in police departments. There's no endemic abuse. Yes, there are a couple that, you know, I get out of line time and time again. And in fact, more white people have died at the hands of these kinds of police officers than black people. It's not a racist thing, but police are under a lot of pressure and they have to react quick. And sometimes they make mistakes. In any event, I'll be back next week with another special edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, stay safe. Thank you for listening to me. And please share this podcast. May God bless you and your family.